Make up mind. Fight.
Nuzlocks are my favorite way to replay Pokemon games. Adding a bit of a roguelike tinge to the average Pokemon playthrough can really help up the difficulty and stakes, and the amount of self-induced story and drama that can come from a dramatic death or close battle is really thrilling. However, even I, someone who's a big fan of this self-imposed challenge, can admit that there's some Pokemon who don't feel particularly well suited for the Nuzlocke playstyle. And I'm not talking about on the player side, though there are a lot of useless gimmick mons to be caught in these games. I'm talking about the opponent side, be it for punishing difficulty, surprising gimmicks, moves that can guarantee death, or any combination of all three. In this video, I wanted to name my picks for the scariest Pokemon to encounter during Nuzlocks. I want to stress that we're talking about entire Pokemon here, and not specific one-time encounters, so things like Whitney's Miltank and Ultra Necrozma, while definitely infamous walls, will not be included. We're also considering both vanilla and randomizer Nuzlocks for this criteria, and assuming that the people playing are using the base Nuzlocke rules, since I feel like these are the most popular ways to do them. That said, let's roll. Our first entry is one on this list that almost immediately violates our entire Pokemon not specific encounters rule in Skuntank. Skuntank, and to a lesser extent its pre-evolution Stunky, can be a surprisingly difficult opponent to surmount unscathed in the context of a Nuzlocke. It rocks a somewhat atypical type combination that makes it only weak to ground type attacks, which can prove problematic in a play format where the player doesn't get to choose their teammates. It also appears very early and very frequently in certain games, often below its official evolution threshold of 32, which means that its normally mediocre 479 base stat total can be bolstered significantly against an underleveled team. This is most notable in the fights against Galactic Commander Jupiter in Gen 4 and its remakes, where she has one at level 20. This isn't even the only time in the game you have to fight her either, so she can definitely catch you off guard as you progress through the story. In addition, the main reason Skuntank makes this list is because of its ability Aftermath. A few Pokemon also have this ability, including Drifblim in the Electrode line, but it's especially noteworthy on Skuntank due to the other traits we've outlined here. Aftermath causes a Pokemon who KO Skuntank with a contact move to receive 1/4 of its HP back in damage, a threshold that can very easily sneak up on you and cause a swansong death if you finish Skuntank with less than 25% HP. Considering the other aspects we've discussed here, having a team on its last legs during an important battle against Skuntank is not out of the realm of possibility, and it's entirely too probable that your valued team member might get sniped by Skuntank's ability on its way out. There's very few things as frustrating in Nuzlocke is losing a team member to indirect or non-battle damage, especially after what appears to be a victory, be it Poison, Destiny Bond, or Aftermath. Skuntank additionally has a pretty stacked move pool and learns Flamethrower through level up, which can definitely be a surprise if you try and take it on with something like the Turtwig line or a Steel type. Also, Stunky appears very early in Pokemon Sword and Shield, being among the first Pokemon to encounter in the wild area, which can be problematic for switch training low-level Pokemon due to the reasons we've outlined here. So yeah, the Skuntank line can be a surprising killer in a Nuzlocke context. Talk about foul. Next up is a much more situational and gimmicky trio of Pokemon who all make this list for the same reason: Diglett, Trio, and Trapinch. Those unfamiliar with Nuzlocks might be looking at these three and wondering, what makes these little nubs so scary? But those who've Nuzlocked any Gen 3 games can easily attest to the terror of these three ground-bound killers, because you see, all three of these Pokemon rock the ability. This simple ability prevents opposing Pokemon, flying types, and levitate users exempt from running or switching out. This isn't too big a deal if you're leading with a strong Pokemon who can easily counter ground types, but if you're attempting to switch train or level up an underleveled teammate against some weaker wild mons, it's basically guaranteed death. Imagine the horror of getting into a battle with one of these seemingly weak Pokemon with your newly captured fresh out teammate, attempting to switch train them and being told no. You then promptly attempt to flee from the battle and are again told no. At this point, your only options are skate or die, with die being much more likely. It's also worth noting that Trio and Trapinch specifically are particularly dangerous in this context, as Trio can be encountered up to the mid-30s in Diglett Cave, at a point where the player's Pokemon are likely in their 20s, and Trapinch has a monstrous 100 base attack stat. For reference, that's tied with several legendaries and megas. So yeah, while these three mons aren't particularly scary under normal circumstances, their unique combination of traits can make them a keen exterminator for low-level team members, and they should be treated as such. We all know that Explosion and Self-Destruct are killers in a Nuzlocke, but luckily, most Pokemon who have them as attacks are comfortably taken out before they can use them. Coughing, Voltorb, Baltoy, they're not too concerning. However, from Gen 5 onward, Graveler should not be taken lightly as a sacrificial warrior. Not only does Graveler very frequently appear as a wild encounter in a lot of late-game caves and dungeons, but it boasts the terrifying combination of Sturdy and Suicide attacks. Prior to Gen 5, Sturdy really isn't a concern at all. It just protects the user from already ineffectual one-hit KO moves. However, once it becomes a built-in focus sash for the Pokemon who had it, allowing them to always survive damage from full health with 1 HP, Graveler suddenly got a lot scarier. With its combination of self-destruction moves and Sturdy, Graveler basically becomes the ultimate Hail Mary sacrificial lamb Pokemon, with it often realizing that it has nothing left to lose and blowing up once it survives any given attack with Sturdy. A battle that should be a quick water, grass, fighting, or ground type sweep quickly becomes a terrifyingly effective sucker punch as your favorite Pokemon is effortlessly blown up by these random combustible stones. Imagine your surprise when a random crap mob Graveler survives your 90 base power surf and blows you up for your trouble. This, combined with Graveler's aforementioned frequency as a late game cavemon, makes any trip through a victory road in certain Pokemon games in the series the equivalent to walking a minefield. The ability to unleash a 250 base power attack becomes a lot scarier when the Pokemon using it is guaranteed to survive at least one turn. I guess most of this also goes for Fortress and Golem as well, but to be fair, they're both much rarer in the wild than Graveler. While Graveler requires a specific combination of traits to be truly dangerous, between it needing both post-Gen 5 Sturdy and a self-destruction move, those traits cross over just a bit too often in certain games for me to feel comfortable leaving it off the list. Next up is a famous Pokemon who makes the list purely due to its overwhelming stats at the point in the games the player is required to fight it at, being Snorlax. Now, you could argue that Snorlax violates our no specific encounters rule, but I counter that by reminding you that multiple mandatory fights against Snorlax exist throughout the series. Snorlax is the closest thing to a non-legendary wild boss fight present in the series, as its staggering 540 base stat total, gargantuan attack and HP stats, and combination of high special defense and rest make it an extremely difficult Pokemon to put down without some resistance. In addition, in most games it appears in, it's not only available, but required to fight woefully early in the game for how strong it is. In Gen 1 and its remakes, 2 Snorlaxes have to be fought to gain access to the lower section of the map, being encountered at level 30 when the player's most recent mandatory trainer battle was against someone with a level 25 Golbat. In X and Y, it's fought at level 15 in a mandatory story battle, making it a Pokemon with endgame level stats the player is required to fight before the second gym. On top of this, Snorlax has a decently low catch rate, meaning that the obvious solution of just catching it and ending the battle immediately can result in death should Snorlax break out and counterattack. It's also difficult to put down, as it rocks insane defense stats and rest. In some cases, it even has Snore or Sleep Talk, so you're not even safe while it's sleeping. All things considered, Snorlax is a remarkably straightforward Pokemon whose frightening traits are deceptively simple to explain, it's strong, mandatory to fight early on in a few games, and difficult to both KO and catch. It's like the perfect storm for a Nuzlocke boss fight. All I'm saying is, you don't know fear until you've seen your Pokemon's HP plummet after getting hit by Chip Away in X and Y. While Snorlax isn't gimmicky or guaranteed to kill a Mon, it's ultimately a Pokemon that will not go down easy whenever the player is required to fight it, assuming they don't have a fighting type on their side. Next up on our list is a Pokemon that's not too concerning under normal circumstances, but is primarily a problem in the case of particularly daring randomizers, Shedinja. Now, in a vanilla game, Shedinja is not a concern. It doesn't often crop up, and when it does, the player is likely prepared for it. In a randomizer Nuzlocke, however, especially one without the no early Wonder Guard box ticked, Shedinja can potentially softlock you. For the 2 people in the audience who are unaware, Shedinja is a very gimmicky Pokemon. It has only 1 HP and can be KO'd instantly through either attack or indirect damage, and this is counterbalanced by its unique ability Wonder Guard, which makes it completely immune to any attack that's not super effective against it. This means that, should the player encounter Shedinja without either a super effective attack or a means of dealing indirect damage, it literally becomes impossible to defeat. Luckily, this situation is very rare, thanks in part to Shedinja's multiple weaknesses and the plethora of indirect damage sources in the series, but it's also very possible in a Nuzlocke, especially a Randomizer, where Shedinja could crop up anytime and the player can't pick their teammates for one to show up when the player is simply not prepared. You know a Pokemon is problematic when the Universal Randomizer includes an option to exclude this Pokemon and its ability from the potential encounter pool. It's obviously more likely than not that the player will have an answer to Shedinja whenever it crops up, but the fact that our immediate reaction whenever we see it is to mentally run through our entire team to make sure we do have a check is a testament to its soft-locking capabilities. What happens if your Shedinja counter dies earlier in the battle before Shedinja itself actually comes out? You're kind of SOL. Overall, Shedinja's likely never going to actually soft-lock you, but the fact that it hypothetically can, and the immediate mini panic we all go through whenever we see it in a Nuzlocke, earns it its place on this list. Let's quickly discuss a few more Pokemon that are specifically scary in the early game of a Randomizer Nuzlocke. The player will likely never battle these Pokemon early enough in a traditional Nuzlocke for them to be a danger, but in a Randomizer, they are a worst-case early game scenario. Gibble and the Regis. While these Pokemon might seem unrelated, they all boast the unique ability to f***ing murk you early in a Nuzlocke. Prior to Generation 8, Gibble learned Dragon Rage as early as level 7. Dragon Rage, of course, is a move that always does a fixed 40 damage. Early in the game, this move can be legitimately insurmountable. It takes quite a few levels for early game mons to have enough HP to survive more than 1 or 2 Dragon Rages, and if they do, they need to outpace Gibble's damage enough to make sure that 40 damage a turn doesn't take them down. A few other Pokemon get fixed damage moves very early, but none of them really boast the combination of damage and early accessibility that Gibble has with Dragon Rage. 40 damage is a lot for a weak mon. As for the Regis, they're in a similar position of gaining access to devastating moves early on, but in their case, it's both one of their only moves and Explosion. Yes, for reasons that are known only to one sick, twisted Game Freak employee, prior to the more recent generations, all 3 of the Regis learn Explosion at level 1. This is literally one of their only 2 attacking moves fresh out of the egg. If you ever see a Regi as either your first encounter of a run or, God forbid, a starter option, then you'd best be prepared to restart and re-randomize because your ass is grass and they're about to mow it, or blow it up. What's especially funny about this is that Game Freak likely realized that this was absolutely asinine, and Explosion was moved from their literal first move to their ultimate level 78 final super attack in later generations. I can't think of anything quite as funny in Pokemon as Explosion literally existing at opposite ends of these Pokemon's learned sets in different generations. Still, the memories of our beloved starters being blasted away by wild Regis and Randomizers is something that cannot be erased no matter how hard Game Freak tries. What can be erased, though, is your starter when they blow up. And the final Pokemon on our list is the undisputed scariest Pokemon to fight in a Nuzlocke. Be it vanilla, randomized, early game, or late game, this Pokemon's name strikes fear into the hearts of Nuzlockers everywhere. It is a true threat. Tremble in fear, it's Wobbuffet. Yeah, if you've never done a Nuzlocke before, you might be tilting your head right now, but make no mistake, Wobbuffet pretty much guarantees a dead mon when it shows up. Without very careful and patient play, Wobbuffet is certain death for whatever gets sent in against it. Let's start with the basics. Wobbuffet's ability is Shadow Tag, an ability that prevents opposing Pokemon from switching out or fleeing. Great start, you send in a Pokemon against it and it's locked in. On top of this, Wobbuffet's moveset is pretty much guaranteed to carry any combination of Counter, Mirror Coat, and Destiny Bond, which sucks. Counter and Mirror Coat both take either a physical or special move used by the player, takes the numerical damage they did to Wobbuffet, doubles them, and throws them back at the player. So if you did 50 damage, Wobbuffet's Counter or Mirror Coat will do a guaranteed 100 back at you. Combine this with Wobbuffet's gargantuan HP stat, and amounts of HP lost on Wobbuffet that don't look like much quickly become enough to instantly murk your Pokemon. This move also ignores stat changes and cannot miss, so you can't buff in preparation animation for it or hope to get lucky with a dodge. Due to possessing both Counter and Mirror Coat, Wobbuffet is prepared for any kind of attack that's used on it. As far as Destiny Bond goes, this move makes it so that if Wobbuffet is KO'd before it attacks after using it, the opposing Pokemon will also be KO'd. So if you throw out a kill move at Wobbuffet, it can reverse it, also killing you. This applies to anything that kills Wobbuffet, be it poison, indirect damage, or any amount of damage done by a direct attack. If you kill it, you're also dead. Not that poison specifically really matters though, because Wobbuffet also has Safeguard, a move that blocks status ailments. So basically, Wobbuffet blocks your Pokemon in, doubles and returns any damage it takes, blocks status ailments, and can kill your Pokemon for killing it. It punishes you for performing basic game functions and has an answer or a counter for literally everything that you can do to it. Wobbuffet is already a gotcha Pokemon in a normal run, meant to surprise players and throw their moves back at them, but in a Nuzlocke, it's borderline cruel, and battles against it should also be carefully considered and planned. Anytime a Wobbuffet comes out, the player effectively needs to navigate the battle with the same precision as open heart surgery. A battle against a Wobbuffet quickly becomes a mathematical equation that needs to be navigated with extreme patience and care. Whatever Pokemon you have out when Wobbuffet shows up is basically screwed without careful play, and if you don't have a means to prolong the battle and wait out Destiny Bond or dodge counters, you're literally put in a position where your only move is to attack, knowing that it will end up getting you killed. Wobbuffet is a Pokemon that exists directly in opposition to the Nuzlocke playstyle. It punishes you for simply playing the game, and can effectively promise a dead Mon even with perfect play. Your starter, your beloved favorite, your main character, Wobbuffet doesn't care. Everything is a challenge. It's all a game to Wobbuffet, and you're likely the loser. Not very funny for a Pokemon based on a comedian. Hey there, thanks for watching. I know this video is a bit shorter than my usual fare, but I've wanted to make this one for a while, and I figured I'd throw it out in between what's likely to be a very long previous video and a very long next video. Depending on when I actually get around to working on it, this video will either come out at the beginning of July or the very end of June. But either way, I hope you enjoyed, hope you have a fantastic day before, during, and after watching. If you want to see more Nuzlocke related stuff on this channel, I'd be more than down to do it, and I hope you have a fantastic day before, during, and after watching. Thanks and cheers.